no sex.
Do you think that's possible?
I don't think it's possible for me. I think people need to have sex to enjoy life.
I don't know if asexuality is a normal thing. I think sexuality is a good thing. I think it's a natural thing, and it's healthy, and it's good to be sexual.
And I wondered if you had heard of people who are asexual.
Yeah, I think they're called mothers. Working moms with kids, they tend to be asexual.
Dr. Patrick Carnes is one of the world's leading experts on sexual dysfunction and recovery. He deals with patients who are essentially repulsed by sex.
People who not only don't want to be sexual, they find the thought intolerable, angry at the thought, obsessed with anything that would present itself as sexual to them.
As a scientist, he admits it's a lot more difficult to study something that's absent.
When people have no behavior that is troublesome, they're not committing sex offenses, they're not doing sexual harassment, they're not being unfaithful, they're not using prostitutes compulsively. The culture doesn't really have a lot of interest in these people, and yet there are lots of them out there.
Given that asexuality is a lack of or an absence of sexual orientation, it's more difficult to get a handle on. It's more difficult to study because you're studying the absence of something, not some sort of display or some sort of very recognizable, out there kind of phenomenon.
Professor Anthony Bogart is one of the few in the scientific community doing extensive research into asexuality. Professor Bogart's area of expertise is the origin of sexual orientation, or what contributes to making a person gay or straight. He was interested in finding out if asexuality was a natural outcome of sexual orientation.
One of the main challenges is that asexual people are not very visible in society. And because they're not very visible in society, you have to recruit individuals who are asexual. And if you recruit them into a sexuality lab, given that they're not interested in sexuality, they're not interested in sexual attraction per se, they probably have a hesitancy about coming into the lab. So finding enough individuals to study can be hard.
Professor Bogart found a survey in Great Britain that sampled 18,000 people between the ages of 16 and 60 with questions of sexual preference. They were asked what, if any, sex they were attracted to. 1% claimed they had never been attracted to the opposite or the same sex. Professor Bogart stresses that his findings are in the very preliminary stages, but he did find some shared characteristics.
Asexuals tended to be, on average, more religious. There seemed to be more women than men who reported being asexual and never having attraction for men or women. Women who were asexual, on average, tended to go through menarche a little later than sexual individuals. Aside from what I've already mentioned, there was also some psychosocial characteristics. One characteristic was that asexual people tended to be less well educated relative to the sexual group.
If you consider the coming out of the gay community over the past decade, and the fact that society has learned to accept most sexual variations, asexuals could be the last disenfranchised sexual minority.
I really thought I was the only one that didn't have these feelings, and that, there was something very wrong with me for not having these feelings. I didn't know anybody else like me, and it seemed like everyone else in the world was all into sex and relationships and dating.
Oftentimes I hear people make the statement that, well, I don't need sex and I'm unhappy. I'm not unhappy about it. But I find they're suicidal, or they're depressed, or they're manifesting what we call post-traumatic stress disorder because they've been sexually abused as children, for example, or they're a sexual assault victim. It's hard to work with people who really don't want to change it. And so there's not that motivation to do therapy. However, there is a large number of people out there who have made those statements and they know that it's not true.
It's pretty difficult to find anything to laugh about when it comes to the life of an asexual. But at least one comedian has taken on the challenge.
Okay.